Hi, I'm Arun George, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. India was initially using just one test to detect the spread of COVID-19, the polymerase chain reaction or PCR test, which is performed on nasal or throat swabs of the patient. This test gives results in about 9 hours. So as an additional tool, India considered using serological blood tests that checks an individual's plasma for antibodies that have been developed against the virus. While these tests wouldn't confirm if a person was COVID-19 positive, they would give results in 30 minutes. They would help estimate the transmission of the disease in a group of people. Multiple states' chief ministers called for these tests to be brought in, and so the government did. It obtained 5 lakh such kits from 2 Chinese firms and distributed them in states. But pretty soon there was a problem. They weren't very accurate. This is what R. Ganga Khedkar from the Indian Council for Medical Research or ICMR had to say on the 21st of April.
कई जगह पे 6% से लेके जाके 71% जो RT-PCR पॉजिटिव सैंपल्स थे उनकी ये जो खून के ऊपर जो टेस्ट हुई वो पॉजिटिव आ रही है। ये कोई अच्छी चीज़ नहीं, क्योंकि वो वेरिएशन जब ज़्यादा दिखता है तो हमको उसको इन्वेस्टिगेट करना पड़ेगा। इसके बावजूद भी कि वो फर्स्ट जनरेशन एलाइजा है, जैसे मैंने बार बार आपको समझा के बोला था, फर्स्ट जनरेशन जो टेस्ट होती है, नई टेस्ट जब आती है तो उसमें वेरिएशंस दिखते हैं, वो थोड़ी क्रूड फॉर्म में आती है। और जैसे बार बार बोल रहा हूँ, सिर्फ 3.5 महीने हो चुके हैं ये बीमारी को। अब जो भी चीज़ आएगी उसको तो आगे रिफाइन करना ज़रूरी पड़ेगा। तो हमने एक डिसाइड किया कि ये फाइंडिंग्स को नज़रअंदाज करना नहीं है। हम लोगों ने यहाँ जो दिल्ली में किया था हमारे लोगों के पास से, उसमें तकरीबन 71% जो RT-PCR पॉजिटिव थे उनको ये पकड़ रही थी टेस्ट बराबर। और जैसे टाइम जाता है, 7 दिन का टाइम अगर हो गया तो वो पॉजिटिव आने का चांस भी बढ़ रहा था।
The ICMR asked states to stop using these kits till they evaluated them. Then on the 27th of April, all states were asked to stop using the rapid testing kits. We now speak with Abantika Ghosh, who has been reporting extensively on India's handling of the pandemic about why we considered the kits, why we rejected them, why the government has been clarifying just how much it spent on them, and whether it hurts India's campaign against COVID-19. Hi, Abantika. Thanks so much for taking the time out from a very busy schedule. I'm going to start by asking, what was the logic behind these rapid testing kits?
So these rapid testing kits, actually, as the name suggests, it's a rapid test. It takes less than 30 minutes. The usual RT-PCR takes 8-9 hours. The logic basically was that as the disease spreads in the population, it is important for policymakers, public health people, epidemiologists to understand how much the disease has spread, where all it has spread. So that is principally why, as the government has repeatedly said, for surveillance purposes and to generate epidemiological data, we were using the rapid tests. Now, a lot of states had actually been pushing for these tests, but many of them were sort of planning on using them for diagnostic purposes as well. But there is a problem there because, these tests, the tests that we had imported, they basically test the presence in the blood of antibodies to the novel coronavirus. So the problem with that is your body takes a little time to generate those antibodies. And in those times, if you use this as a diagnostic test rather than a test to purely generate surveillance data, then the risk is that for all those 8, 10, 7 days, whatever time your body takes, depending on the efficiency of your immune system to form the antibodies, you will essentially end up spreading this disease. So that is why, for diagnostic purposes, it was not a very good option. It was essentially an exit test. If a person has antibodies, there are only two things. A, if the person has antibodies, that is the rapid test is positive, but the RT-PCR is negative, then it shows that there was an infection at a past date. So that's the kind of use we had in mind when we got these tests.
So in your piece, Abantika, you've written about how the WHO never really endorsed these tests in any way. There have been other nations that have also been attempting to use these. So why would India go ahead with something like this then?
WHO has essentially said that these are tests that should not be used outside of laboratory settings, primarily because these are very new tests. So this is a new disease, and all of these diagnostic tools that actually includes RT-PCR as well, they're very new. They're so-called first-generation tools. So they still need some validation in appropriate settings at the population level. And WHO's concern basically is that if you use a test that is not adequately validated or that is not adequately sensitive, you might end up missing cases. And the risk in that is it's one thing to never have tested for the virus, it's another thing to have tested and found negative, and then the person sort of goes around thinking that I don't have the infection and lives his or her life, whereas the person is carrying the infection. So then that risk of spread is actually heightened. So that is the reason. But for India, it makes sense because the way India was planning to use these tests were to simply generate data. In a sense, what WHO says for laboratory purposes, for research settings, so India was planning to generate data in evacuee centers and all these migrants who had been kept in facilities across the country. Those kinds of settings India was planning on using. At least the ICMR had clearly said that these are not to be used for diagnostic purposes. And there are long-term uses for such surveillance data, for research. Even a drug company that invests in making a drug for this would want to know what is the kind of people, what is the number of people affected. That's the kind of data we were looking at.
So then India got about 5 lakh of these kits, and we started rolling these out to various states. At what point did doubts start emerging?
Actually, it started emerging just a few days, I think less than a week into the tests, when they started showing huge differences. The accuracy ranged from 6% to 71%. This is what ICMR's head of epidemiology, Dr. R. Gangakhilekar, told us last week, that these were huge swings in accuracy. These are not figures that a scientist can possibly work with. It was very uncertain. What you also mentioned is that the fact that, these are first generation tests and they need a lot more time. And ICMR was initially hopeful that once the validation exercise has been completed, maybe some batches are faulty, but overall we would be able to continue to use the kits. But that did not happen. That's why yesterday's letter to the states happened, asking them to discontinue the test for now.
So once the government told the states to stop using these tests, why did it feel the need to also come out and clarify about the aspect of payment?
Because there is a court case going on about the price that the government paid for these kits. So there were these reports that the government actually paid 600 rupees for a kit that cost 225. So even outside of that press statement about how the lowest tender was chosen and how when the government tried to get it directly from the Chinese company, it didn't work because the Chinese company would not have taken care of logistics. So that got too complicated. The timelines weren't very clear there. Even outside of that, in unofficial conversations, the health ministry too has been making a lot of very forceful points about how once the L1 is in, you have no option but to choose the L1, which is the lowest tender. So obviously, there is also the sense that when you are procuring something in a very short period of time, everything is happening very quickly, you have that much less room to find out what the market value is, call for retendering and all that. This was not exactly that kind of a setup also. That's what officials are trying to tell us. But however that may be, it is a fact that ICMR has kind of gotten involved in a bit of a controversy about the pricing of these kits, especially at this time when the government is repeatedly issuing orders and advisories, the Ministry of Home Affairs, about profiteering and all that. So it seems the government itself got caught in a little bit of that.
And finally, Abantika, India now has the relatively more reliable PCR test to detect the virus, but these take more time. Is that supposed to be a problem while attempting to slow the spread of the disease?
Maybe, yes, you could say that, but then you don't have any other choice. Even when the antibody tests were there, assuming everything was fine and they were still in use, you were still not supposed to be using them for diagnostic purposes. Like I explained earlier, you could lose very valuable time. I mean, compared to the 8-9 hours you lose waiting for RT-PCR test to come in, you could be looking at 8 to 10 days of a positive person spreading the disease before that person actually shows in the tests that he or she has the infection. So I think from a epidemiological perspective or from a disease control perspective, it's a very easy choice to make. You don't have a choice but RT-PCR currently. Yeah, but we have some issues there because we are currently short of RNA extraction kits. We just have enough to last us a week, and without RNA extraction kits, which are used to get the RNA, the novel coronavirus is an RNA virus, so you have to get that nucleic acid, the RNA, out of the virus to run the RT-PCR test and identify it. We are short of those kits, and if those kits run out, then we won't be able to do the test. So that is a different worry. But I don't think being left with just RT-PCR per se is a worry.
Thousands of people who migrated from their home states to other states for work were left stranded after a nationwide lockdown was announced on the 25th of March. Some walked home. Others were either stranded where they were or were sent to camps that had been set up along the way. After an easing of restrictions on the 20th of April, multiple states started making provisions to bring back migrants in other states. Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh evacuated students stuck in the educational hub of Kota in Rajasthan and are now making plans to ferry back workers who are stuck in other states. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Home Affairs issued fresh guidelines for the interstate movement of people stranded in other states. But one state that resisted all past attempts to bring back people was Bihar. The state initially refused to bring back students from Kota, and then in a meeting with the Prime Minister on Monday, Chief Minister Nitish Kumar left it to the central government to take a decision on what steps were to be taken. We speak to Santosh Singh, who covers Bihar for the Indian Express, about why the state had resisted all past attempts to bring back those stuck in other states and how it's dealing with COVID-19. Hi, Santosh. Thanks you could take the time out to talk with us. You know, Bihar refused to bring back students from Kota, and it has also made no move to bring back residents from the state that are stranded in other states. What's the logic there?
The logic is very simple. Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar says it's outright violation of lockdown rules. So long as center makes any exceptions to the lockdown rules, they cannot bring back their students or any migrant caught up in other states. And second thing, Bihar already has 366 cases till yesterday, and 25 of 38 districts are infected now. See, they do not want to invite any problem. That is their logic.
So the Ministry of Home Affairs has come out with a new set of guidelines on how interstate movement of people can take place, especially migrants. Sir, could you just tell us what has happened?
See, the Bihar government and I think some other states had been asking for clarity of rules, the clarity of norms and movement, interstate movement of migrants, and including students stuck up in other states, including Kota. So Bihar government had been very clear that bringing them to state to is a violation of lockdown rules. Now that the MHA order has come, it orders states ki free. Now the interstate movement is allowed, buses can be arranged. Complete guidelines are not there because I just read the operative order. It just said now those who are willing to go to their states, they can go. What we have learned from Bihar, the top sources of the Bihar government, the Chief Minister House sources, they are saying they are not going to send any buses because the number could be huge. It could be something around 10 lakh on conservative estimates. Why they are saying so? There is a government COVID relief norm of providing 1,000 rupees in account of a migrant stuck outside. Some 25 lakh people have registered for that. So even if 10 lakh of them are willing to come back to the state, it is very difficult to make arrangements for them. That's why Bihar government has not made it official. Chief Minister had just issued a statement saying we welcome the government order, how the government order is apt, we will comply with the disaster management norm. But nowhere in his statement it is mentioned that they will provide vehicles and all. Then we just called up some top officials and learned that Bihar government is not going to send any vehicles to bring them. They will receive them at the 6 interstate borders. From there, they could be taken to the respective district. They have already made arrangement for 2.5 lakh people to quarantine them at block headquarters. And they are looking at making arrangements for some 6 lakhs as of now. And if more people come, they will arrange accordingly.
But do such moves, does it make him more unpopular on the ground? I mean, because there will be people clamoring for their family members to come back, for children to come back.
To some extent, yes. But I think election is still 6 months away. Nitish Kumar is not thinking along those lines. His first priority is to screen out the entire population and just to contain infection. For last 10 days, it has been on the rise. On 14th of April, it was 64. Now it is 366. You can see that last 10 has been very difficult and it can go up further. Every day, 20, 30, 40 cases are being reported. So the first priority of the health department, disaster management department, so many departments converge together to just to contain the number of cases, and they do not have adequate number of hospital beds. Private hospitals have not yet joined the fight against COVID. So there are multiple issues. So the Nitish Kumar is not looking at one political issue.
Also, there's one thing that Nitish Kumar is a BJP ally, but other BJP ruled states like MP and UP are doing multiple things to get their residents back home. Is that any kind of issue for him, as in going forward?
Yes, they have raised it. When Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister just issued a press release about bringing back their students and also providing some 300 buses for the purpose, he raised the issue. I think he also took up the matter with the Prime Minister also. He said, let there be a clarity on this, let there be uniform rules. If you are saying that it's locked on, it has to be locked on. How can so many people come on the road when people started walking? So it was the utter failure of the Delhi government. Even it happened in Bombay, it was failure of Maharashtra government. What he is saying, if it is locked on, it should be adhered to by all states. And if the students from Bihar are caught up in Uttar Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh students caught up in Bihar, it's the job of that state to take care of those students and scream them out. Okay, there is a system in Delhi of helping students from Bihar. They're saying that they can provide financial support, but bringing them back is difficult.
So, if the objective has been the handling of COVID-19, how good has Bihar been doing and how does it plan to continue going ahead?
I think initially in the first lockdown, the 21 days of 3 weeks of lockdown, the testing was a bit slow. But after that, I think last 15 days, it has picked up. It's because of so many reasons. They have screened more people. Incubation period was complete. The cases are coming, their contact history, travel history. It's all because, like in other places in the country, the infection is because of, I think, 20 odd people. You take the case of Sivan, it's a classic case, just two people, two persons infected, some 30 odd positive cases. Because of those 30 cases, they had to do sampling of some 1,400 people, even Begusarai. So now they have been doing well, but if there is a spurt, that will be difficult because the limited number of beds, only in general 22,000 beds in government hospitals, as against 47,000 in private hospitals. But private hospitals have not joined. We had done the story that Principal Secretary Health Sanjay Kumar had said that it's very unfair that private hospitals have not joined the fight against COVID. So that is a public sector versus private sector class. So there was no clarity of rules. But now I think I would conclude that they are doing well. For the last 7-8 days, screening has picked up. More isolation centers have been created. Now the private hospitals have been also asked to set apart 20% of beds for isolation if it is needed. What they did last time, they were two level. They tried to screen out the entire migrants at 6 interstate borders. And from there, from that point, in buses, they were sent to their respective districts. From their respective districts, they were sent to their respective villages. Not all of them were quarantined. Some were put in home quarantine. Some with symptomatic cases, they were put in schools or in panchayat bhavans, which were building was available, and mukhias were told to arrange for food, and a teacher was posted there. But it didn't work because all were locals, and teacher used to be an outsider. It was very difficult for teacher to monitor them. They would eat their breakfast and lunch and sleep away for work, and again come back, or in some cases would not come back at all. So it didn't work. Not what they are planning. Now they are expecting. Can you imagine the 25 lakh people have registered for benefit of getting 1,000 transfer in their accounts, which the government has announced as COVID relief for migrants stuck up outside. So on a conservative estimate, yesterday we spoke to the BR DGP Gupteswar Pandey. He said that they are expecting no less than 6 lakhs people. If once the lockdown is over, they can come back, because it's not possible that they will go back to job, because entire country is facing the problem. Infection is still on the rise. So what they want to do, there are 534 blocks in Bihar. They want to put them at block headquarters, a centralized quarantine center, where there would be doctors, adequate police, they can cordon off the area, people cannot slip away to their villages. Anyway, villages would be far away from their block headquarters. So they have decided, okay, we are not going to have 4,000, 5,000 quarantine centers. We will maintain the social or physical distancing at a centralized places, might arrange it at 5, 6, 7, 8 schools and whichever government buildings are vacant at block headquarters itself. That is the entire plan. The 2 level of screening, one at the interstate border itself, second at the centralized quarantine centers at block levels.
Born Sahibzade Irfan Ali Khan in Rajasthan in 1967, he came to be better known by the shortened name that appeared in film credits, Irfan Khan. A graduate of the prestigious National School of Drama, Khan made his film debut in Meera Nair's Salaam Bombay. He went on to act in multiple television dramas before the critically acclaimed film The Warrior got him noticed. He then went on to star in films like Hasil, Maqbool, Piku, Haider and Hindi medium in India, but also made a mark in Hollywood with films like Slumdog Millionaire, The Lunchbox, Life of Pi, The Amazing Spider-Man and Jurassic World. The national award-winning actor passed away on Wednesday after being admitted to a Mumbai hospital due to a colon infection. Fans, fellow entertainers and political leaders mourned his passing. In 2013, Khan, who had received the Padma Shri 2 years earlier, visited the Indian Express's office to interact with journalists. He was asked how he had reached where he was after 2 decades of work. Had he charted a course or just gone with the flow? Here's what he said.
Like, I wanted to become a sportsman. And then I could see that I don't have a family support. So I just had 2 choices, whether I become a sportsman or I become actor. Then my naive mind, the kind of logic I had, I said, okay, a sports team, in team, there's a limited number of people and there's a limited age. You can't go beyond after that. But in acting, it's just me and I don't need anybody's support. I can work on myself and there's no limit of numbers. So that's how I chose this field and I entered here. But before that, I tried my hand in doing business and things like that, and I made up my mind that I cannot lead my life just for earning money. That was clarity, I cannot engage myself into something where I'm not engaged emotionally. I cannot make a living out of it. So that clarity I had. So I just had 2 choices, to become actor or sportsman. Then I said I would become actor. Now, how do I go about becoming an actor? I said I learned that craft. So where do I learn? I learned only one institute, National School of Drama. FTI, there was no acting course at that time. So, I was desperate to get into National School of Drama. And fortunately, I got the admission in the first attempt. And for me, I tried to struggle in a normal way, the way people do. Take a photograph and go there and try to appear glamorous and things like that. But it never worked for me. So I got this idea that I had to create my own path. And when you are creating your own path, it takes time. If you are doing the things which I've already done, if you try to follow others, then your journey becomes easier, but it's not original. So what I ended up doing things which I want to do, and they were not done earlier. So that wait was definitely there. I had to wait for a longer time. But I'm happy the way things are turning out. And life has taught me many things. I've got some kind of clarity about certain things and I follow that.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating or review. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet to us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.